So the park is open 24/7. You can enter the park anytime. We just don't staff the entrance station until 8. But if you got here at 6 in the morning, you just drive right in. I promise. I've been here a long time, I promise. Before 8, we're not there, so we're not checking for tickets. So that means people are just driving in, and so there's no line because you just drive in. At 8, we show up and we start checking your passes, and that takes a long time. So it means you get in for free.
Okay.
Enough people are most people don't show up till after 8, so we just make all our money from them. If you get here before 8, it's a national park. Like, we're not here to make money. That's not our goal. So if they get in for free by being here before we open, or before we start staffing the gate, they get down for free. No big deal.
So there's 4 distinct rock formations we can view, and today we are going to walk through each layer. Now none of us brought our climbing gear, myself included, so we won't be able to go up all the way to our top formations. But we're going to walk through the 2, at least 3, up to the base, and discover a little bit about each layer. But we're gonna have some fun, so we're going to build the Zesty Zion cake together. So here are our 4 rock formations: the Moanave, Kayenta, Sandstone, and Temple Cap. Now these are the 4 formations we can view all right here. So those are the 4 we're going to talk about today. And so we're going to put on our baker's cap, and we're going to build our 4 layers. And at the top, we're going to explore the human adaptations of the canyon, and those will be the sprinkles to decorate our cake at the end. So it's going to be a fun one. And as you notice, I have some blank space here. That's because at each formation, we're going to have each group. So each group's got to do one. Pick a flavor to describe each layer. So after we talk about it and discuss it, everyone's going to be in 1, 2, 3, perfect. We have 4 groups. So each group's going to have to pick a layer and pick a flavor for it as we build our Zesty Zion cake together. But as any good baker knows, before we can make our cake, we must first gather ingredients. So I want to take a little practice that I think everyone should do when you visit national parks. I think we often come to these great places to find silence, to kind of relax, but then we're so caught up in the hubbub and we're keep moving, keep driving, finding next parking spot, next trail, next shuttle, that we don't take that second to relax. So we're gonna take a moment of silence here, and I want you to kind of listen to the soundscape. That's the natural sounds of here in Zion, and anywhere you go in the world, and listen for the ingredients that made the canyon. So take that moment of silence and listen for the ingredients of the canyon. Alright, so what do you think are some of the ingredients that built this canyon? Water? Which water? Rainwater.
The Virgin River?
Is this what's water behind us looming? Right, so water, especially in the winter, right, the freezing and thawing. The weathering is the breaking down of material, and that's from, rain, snow, expands and kind of evaporates, and kind of expands when it freezes and then causes rockfall. But also rain, but also the river here. So I don't even know the name of this river here.
Virgin River.
Virgin River. So this Virgin River, 165 miles, river miles, that is. So pretty long river. Headwaters are up in Navajo Lake, up in Dixie National Forest, and eventually it flows out to Lake Mead, and then meets up with Colorado River south of the park towards west. So this river here is pretty mighty. It's carving at 71 feet per mile. Pretty steep gradient for a river. Anyone know a river makes a Grand Canyon?
Colorado.
Yeah, the Colorado River. That's carving at 5 to 20 feet per mile throughout the canyon there. So 71 feet per mile, compared to 5 to 20 is a lot more steep. And then the Mississippi, for reference, is 0.6 feet per mile. So pretty flat. So 70 feet per mile, pretty steep gradient, pretty strong carving power, still carving today. So it's widening out the canyon, and then it pushes out as it widens and deepens. So these canyon walls haven't always been this far apart, but it has been slowly pushing in and then pushing out as it forms the canyon today. So also wind, right? That's another sound we hear, or wind's not a sound. It's movement of particles. I got in a fight with the professor about that in college, but it's whatever. But, right, so wind is the erosion and carrying away of materials once the water breaks it down. So wind carrying it away, the river is a weathering and eroding at the same time, so it's breaking down rocks and then carrying them out as it carves through. You might look at the river today and see some chocolate milk, a little nice mocha, and that's actively carrying out sediment, right? If it was clear, it would be carrying out less sediment, but on days like today when it's pretty milky, it's carrying out sediment as we speak. So it's doing a lot of work, carrying about 1 million tons of sediment every year, 32,000 tons a day, 138 blue whales worth of sediment a day in weight, or 438 of our little shuttle buses going through here. So this river is really doing a lot of work behind the scenes that we're not really giving it credit for. So Virgin River here has made the canyon. All right, so vote. Is this a canyon or mountains? Both, right? So it's a little bit of both, the way it's been carved, but it's a canyon at the end of the day. So it's a plateau. So if you go to the top of this canyon, we're at the bottom of it now, it's all been carved out. There's no fault lines here. The closest one is in Hurricane, about 45 minutes away. So this is all uplift of the Colorado Plateau that's been carved out by the Virgin River here. Now this canyon is about 2 to 3 million years old. That's essentially how long the river's taken to carve through all of these 4 rock formations we have here today. So we'll talk about the environments here that some are 200 million years old, but the river itself has been carving for 2 to 3 million years to create the canyon we have today. So the tallest point on the plateau is going to be this West Temple, kind of the broad face with the little caterpillar hat on top. We'll get into what that is later. I don't want to spoil it now, but that's the tallest point on the plateau, about 3,900 feet above the canyon floor above us, or 1,100 meters. So pretty high up there, and that's the tallest point on the plateau. So unlike a mountain that keeps pushing up and up and up, this has just been carved out from below. And it's just going to keep carving as you expose more layers as you move south. So now we have our ingredients. We'll put our baker's caps on. We'll head up to our first rock formation and begin building our cake. So we'll go ahead and follow the trail this way. Yeah, it's like every job has its trade-offs, but it wasn't like, unfortunately it was more like a simulation. So broke out with weather, I was a little worried a couple days. But
Yeah.
the trail's pretty good.
What's your favorite part that you've been in?
So if anyone remembers that thick band we were talking about earlier, it's right here, right now. So we have made our way, congratulate yourself, up to level 2, formation 2, and we're now in the Kayenta layer. So if anyone's done the Kayenta hike, which right now is a soup as well, but over to the Emerald Pools, it's not a very creative trail name. You're hiking in the Kayenta formation on top of it, so that's the name for that one. But right now we're here in the Kayenta formation. Does anyone remember the name of this thick band I said earlier?
Rocky Road.
Not the flavor.
Ah, okay.
The name. Springdale.
Oh, Springdale.
Yep, Springdale Sandstone. So this Springdale Sandstone thick band is part of the Kayenta Formation, but the Kayenta Formation carries us from the thick band all the way up to where the cliffs start. So where you get those steep cliffs is where the Kayenta Formation starts, and then it ends at the end of the thick band. So we're officially in Formation 2. Our story here is 190 million years old, so 10 million years from the Moenavi and the kind of the streams and the floodplains. So now we're going to be, in the Jurassic period again. Again, a lot of mudstone, siltstone, all sedimentary rock, and now our environment is going to look something more like this. All right, so before we had the big streams, big rivers, now we have a drying environment, more towards, it's not the receding of the ocean. We're not that stage, but it's just kind of retreating rivers, more drying floodplains, coursing towards maybe one river. Maybe that's how we got the Virgin. It kind of forms to one river, more drying floodplain streams. Now it was Jurassic, so we do have dinosaurs in this level as well. Some more options in this one than just our Protochusis guy, which is pretty cool. So he could still probably eat us. But here in the Kayenta Formation, we have, these are our 3 big superstars as far as body fossils. So again, body fossils will be actual skulls, things we found here in the park. So the first one is the Kyantotherium. Again, not a creative name, but it's the first mammal-like reptile we had. So it kind of looks like a naked mole rat or something, you know, of today. But that's the first mammal-like, so, you know, had hair, had fur, and so I don't know if we quite descended from them, you know, back in the Jurassic period, but that's the Kyantotherium. So the first mammal-like reptile we have. The biggest star of the show, and one you might have heard of before coming to the program, is the Dilophosaurus. The Dilophosaurus is also named the Crested Killer. You'll notice the little sacs on the top of its head. That's kind of the crest. And those were nose sacs. So that's how it breathed. That was its nose. You might have seen them in Jurassic in the movies. And they spit venom, and that's not all true. And they had a collar, just kind of spice them up for the movie, and they weren't always just to distinguish them in the movies. But this is how they actually probably would have looked. A theropod, or Eubrontes, so 3 feet, or 3 kind of legs, appendages on their hands. And they were about 880 pounds, 23 feet long, 7 meters, about 6 feet tall. So 23 feet long, but only about 6 feet tall, 880 pounds. So they can move up to 25 miles per hour. So imagine that guy charging at you, 25 miles per hour. Was a carnivore, so would eat meat. And that is kind of the top predator of this Jurassic period in this area was the Dilophosaurus. Then the next one is Ceratosaurus. That name, again, probably not too unique. Probably someone named Sarah named that one. And they were herbivores, meaning they eat plants. I said that earlier, so good remembering on that one. So the Ceratosaurus, so kind of like a modern day giraffe is how I would think of them. 14 feet tall, 4 meters tall. And this is how animals of the past and today coexisted. So you have different animals eating different levels of plants, different types of foods. So carnivores eating the meat. Then you have dinosaurs eating plants, and that's how you get all different types of species of wildlife today, right? Different elevations, different food sources, different, even different like birds that live in different parts of the trees, niche partitioning, you know, changing of environments and habitats. So that's kind of a cool way to look at, you know, how these different dinosaurs all coexisted together, as they different diets and different kind of habitats that they lived in. All right, so that is our Kayenta layer there. Kind of these deep reds, right? Mudstones, sandstone as well. But the drying river stream environment mixed with the dinosaurs. What flavors speak into the next group? So we have Rocky Road from the first group. So the other 3 groups can duel it out. What flavor anyone feeling for this Kayenta formation?
Red velvet.
Red velvet, I like it. Sounds tasty. All right, Rocky Road, Red Velvet, Kayenta moenave. So we will now walk to the base of our 3rd layer. Again, we don't have our climbing gear, so we're not going to scale the sandstone cliffs, but we will head up to our next formation. That'll be the next tour.
Scale.
I don't know how many ranger programs they have climbing. We made it now officially to the top. So give yourself a round of applause, you know. We'll wake up early. Yeah. You guys woke up too, not just me. So it's 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock over there now. All right, so now we are officially at the top of our hike. Before we talk about where all of the peaks we're looking at, we're going to talk about our 4th formation, which are going to be these little hats, these little caterpillars on top of the sandstone cliffs there. So that's called the Temple Cap Formation. The Temple Cap Formation is about 170 million years ago. So once you had the sand dune fields here, you then had a regional sea. It was called the Sundance Sea. And a cool practice, don't do this and tell people it's the correct thing to do. But if you kind of trace it, you'll see some Temple Cap on top of the Sentinel Peak there. You can kind of trace the border of that lake. Now, like I said, it doesn't perfectly work out that way, but it's a good visual to kind of just imagine the big size of this lake. But it went from the West Temple, the Sentinel, the East Temple is behind us. But it was a regional sea, not big enough to have tides like an ocean. So really just kind of a big oasis sea out here, about 170 million years ago. That was on top of the sand dunes. That gives us that kind of funky Temple Cap the way that it eroded, you know, that's still being studied and why it erodes like that. But it is pretty cool. Right, humans have been here in this canyon for 12,000 years is where we can trace human activity back to. Those first groups were the ancestral Puebloan and the ancestral Fremont. Very nomadic groups, so they weren't living here as homesteads. They were traveling around, following the herds, following the seasons, and so their native homeland is not Zion. It's a part of Zion, but it's this whole area encompassing, including the Grand Canyon up to Bryce, as they followed elevations and animal herds. So this is a large, you know, human history is a large chunk of this area here. So without people, we wouldn't have national parks. It's hard to believe that the parks, when they were founded, were kind of the wasteless land theory. They were only allowed national parks to be in places where they couldn't mine them, they couldn't forest them, and they couldn't farm them. And so that's the reason why today a lot of national parks are surrounded by forest land, BLM land. It's because those were, you know, harvested, sustainable harvesting and lumber and mining. But the parks were the wasteless land where you couldn't farm, you couldn't do those things, and that's why we're restricted to these smaller areas surrounded by other federal lands. It's hard to believe as calling these things wasteless land as they were in the 20s, but that's why John Muir was so important in creating that idea that, you know, there is a, you know, innate value to these things. There is a non-monetary value. It's a priceless thing to preserve, and so we really need to thank John Muir was kind of the one that took that step above Gifford Pinchot and the Forest Service and was like, no, these do have a value. We do need to preserve them to recreate, to recreate ourselves, and to reconnect back to nature. So really has been a tough battle for the National Park Service. It hasn't always been easy for us in preserving our land. So really cool, and that we all are public owners of this land, right? These are all public lands. We are all public owners. We share ownership and share the responsibility of taking care of these places to ensure they stay around. So I encourage you, as you go to different parks, you're traveling around, yes, it is a lot of rocks, but take a second to stop and smell the roses, or in Utah, smell the rocks. But take that second, take that moment of silence, appreciate where you've come from, right, the hike, and really take in that moment of silence and grasp the beauty that you're in. As we come out to seek these places, right, but we're often busy in these places, so take that second, you know, at the top here, we'll just take a second, you know, do a 360, look around. You know, the beautiful temples and towers. You have the West Temple here. You have the sundial right to the right. You have the altar of sacrifice with the flat top and the deep reds dripping down. The one in the middle between the sundial and the altar of sacrifice, to me, looks like a Gothic cathedral, so I named it the cathedral. You can name that one if you want. For some reason, it's not been named, so I've claimed that one. If anyone else wants to name it, they can come up with another name. Then moving to the right, you have the beehives, kind of those flat, kind of sanded sections there, and then that Sentinel Peak with the little, looks like a crew cut on top. That's part of the Temple Cap Formation as well, and that's our version of Half Dome. So if you haven't been to Yosemite and Half Dome, cross it off your list. There's Zion's Half Dome. The other half we're standing on, or down on the floor there, that created the Sentinel landslide and the Sentinel Lake that gave us our canyon floor of today. So thank you guys for coming out. Hope you guys learned something about the geology, the human adaptations, how long we've been here in the landscape, and that you take that with you as you go and kind of take that practice of slowing down, you know, enjoy where you're going at, and, you know, learn something at each park. It creates a better memory and creates a better appreciation as we help preserve these landscapes all together. So thank you guys for coming out today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Would anybody like these Zesty Zion cake? I can auction it off.
I want it.
Yes, if anyone would like to take a picture of it before, pass it off. Our beautiful art project this morning.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Take a picture of
We're good. Thank you.
All right, we're at the Watchman Trail. You know what we're talking about.
I don't know which I want to eat though first.
So this Watchman Trail here, like I was saying, was one of the original trails in the park. 1935 it was built by the Civilian Conservation Corps as well. So we just walked on one of the original park trails too. So very, very cool.
The Paiute people have been coming to Mukungtuweap since the beginning of time. We believe that we're connected to these lands in a powerful way. These lands are now called Zion, and Zion belongs to everyone. Zion has many gifts to give, but there's also a need for balance, and we have to be able to give back. It's important that people take the time to connect to this land and to connect in a personal way. As Paiute people, we have many stories that come from these lands, and each of us can make our own story here.
Thanks, Clay. Have a good day.
You spend enough time in a place and you start to care for it, and you spend enough time in a place and it becomes home, and that's Zion for me, is a place that feels like home.
Climbing's been a part of my life longer than anything other than my immediate family. I watched Cliffhanger when I was 14. I thought I could do that. That started something, and it's progressed from there, and so it's more deeply ingrained in me than most things in life.
I think we all experience places like this in our own way. And like the layers of rock here, there's layers of stories about Zion, layers of things to learn here.
When I was 19 years old, my parents decided that they were going to take a trip to a national park, and it was going to be a family affair. Before we even landed, I was just enthralled right away. That experience really took a hold of me, and it stuck with me. And I saw people my age that were working there, and I said, what a cool thing to do. That was kind of the beginning of it all. And I will say, I do enjoy my job, but I find that I spend most of my time these days inside the office. Sitting in a chair all day is something that I was originally trying to avoid. But I think over the years, my perspective has changed. And I don't necessarily view the office job as I once did. I feel that the work that I'm doing is meaningful. I'm one of many that are putting in this contribution to not only help protect the park in the present and in the future, but also to help provide a quality experience.
A big part of my job and any wildlife biologist's job is to watch animals, because we won't be able to know anything about them unless we watch and learn. We do have a condor chick in the park. We've had other chicks in the past, but none of them have survived to where they have been able to fly for the first time. This is one of those examples that it gives me pure joy in my job, is to be able to see this progression. We have to take these really momentous events such as this and really celebrate them. I've seen condors up close. I've gotten to hold them, and they're beautiful birds. People get a condor and I'm like, God, it's ugly. And that breaks my heart when I hear that. I'm like, you have no idea. You watch them for one day, you'll love them. Working every day, monitoring these animals, and actually seeing something successful happen out of it. We have to help people understand the importance of the place they are currently in and to make them care about it. It is really important for people to remember that we as humans are part of the ecosystems. I mean, we promote people to go to the outdoors, to appreciate the parks, to enjoy the parks, but at the same time, when there's too many in one place, they're hurting the parks, damaging the parks. I see the impact that people have on this place firsthand every day with my job. And how do we find that balance? I don't really think we have answered that quite yet.
東京はとても大きな都市ですごくたくさんの人たちが働いています。すごくたくさんの人が住んでいるんだけれども、特に隣の人とつながろうっていうふうには子供の頃は公園、外で遊ぶのが大好きですごく気分が解放されて、やっぱりまた外でなんか遊びたいなって思って行ったことのないところとかやったことのない経験、これからザイオンに行っているんですけどめちゃめちゃ楽しみにしてて、そこでの経験と自分がどんな気持ちになるのか、もう本当になんかスケールが違う。待ち遠しくて仕方がないです。
The mornings in Zion are one of my favorite things. But I've been milking cows since I was 5 years old, and to be out with the animals, that got me out of bed, and I didn't just get up and go to school. I had to get up early and do my chores. We moved here in 1962, and I got a job as a naturalist and worked for 14 summers in Zion Park. There's nothing in all the world like Zion in my estimation, and I think almost as impressive is the engineering and operation to build trails and make access to it that has been going on since the beginning of the park.
In a series of amazing switchbacks, the Zion-Mount Carmel Highway climbs out of Zion Canyon and goes through Mount Carmel Tunnel, a mile of solid rock.
The tunnel was completed on the 4th of July in 1930. It was one of the longest tunnels of its kind in the world at that time.
Entering Mount Carmel Tunnel, a magnificent engineering achievement of the National Park Service, cut through the solid rock, lighted by 6 windows, each with a view that literally slows you down.
One of the main purposes of the tunnel was to connect highways 89 and 91 so that more people could come and enjoy these places without so much traffic. This opened up the park to a lot more people. It's more like Disneyland now, what it used to be. But before artists came in and surveyors came in, people just wouldn't believe a place like this existed.
One of the things about Zion that is so special is the color of these cliffs. The combinations of the white and the orange and the red of the sandstone. It's a painter's dream. It's almost like the park itself is a work of art. It's a painting. It has this perfect combinations of colors already here. Many of our early national parks owe their existence to the work of artists early on in the days of these early parks' history. Delabar wrote and painted, and it was a combination of that written word with the visual images to go along with it that inspired people to believe perhaps a place really did exist that they were describing that looked so otherworldly. Some people may be discouraged from coming to a park because it may be busy, but our national parks really are everybody's home. This is our backyard for everybody. It's important to think about the whole purpose of our national parks. Purpose is to conserve the scenery, the natural and historic objects, and the wildlife therein, and to provide for enjoyment of the same in such manners and by such means as will leave them unimpaired for the enjoyment of future generations. So that's a quote from the Organic Act of 1916, establishing the National Park Service. And so within those lines is the framework that these national parks are here for, what they're built upon, and that is preservation for public enjoyment. And there has to be a balance in there. We have to have people coming here. That's what they're here for. This is not just wilderness preserves in and of their own intrinsic value, but they're here for us to enjoy. And I think it's really important that people do come out here, find their own connections, their own perspective, and realize just how special these places are and why they are protected.
It just broke off. When you tie in with someone, there's an unspoken commitment to that person. And that commitment is, I'm here to save your life. It's fragile everywhere here. There needs to be a healthy respect, whether you're in the vertical terrain or whether you're in the horizontal.
Being a person who wants to return here and continue coming here for the rest of my life, I know that there's a lifetime of things to learn and experience here beyond just being a climber.
日本では見たことのない自然を見たいなと思ってきました。自分がどんな風な気持ちになるのかっていうのを、楽しみに来ました。広大っていう言葉では収まりきらないぐらいスケールが大きくて、色がすごく綺麗だし、地層がこう描く模様がなんか見たことがないぐらい綺麗。そういうこうパワフルな一面も持っているけれども、例えば触って別にもう例えばすくった時にそれが自分をこう傷つけるわけでもなくて、でなんかそういうことを考えると、自分はそういう水みたいな時によって強くもあったり優しくもあったり、誰かを助けてあげられる、そういう存在になりたいなっていうふうに思います。 れ前行こうかな。あ、いい匂い。美味しい美味しい。これいける。なんかちゃんとしてた。なんか3秒ルール。星も出てきたし。
Canyoneering is kind of like going into a history book. It gives you a really neat and overarching view of the geology and the formation of the area. Each layer in Zion holds a different secret, and being able to interact with that in such an intimate space as a canyon gives you a completely different view of the canyon as this very personal and historic place. Zion is the most impressive exposure of Navajo sandstone in the world, but water carved these canyons, and that process hasn't stopped. There's a power that moves through these canyons, and flash floods are a deadly reality. And for us, it's about understanding and respecting that process.
Going into canyons is kind of like going into the arteries of the earth. Where water flows, energy also flows. You're in these places where it's really narrow. It's easy to forget that it radiates until you come into a place where you can touch the wall, where you can touch both of the walls. It's cool to be able to travel through that space and travel through that energy while being like the thing that moves through that place, being like water.
Water is very powerful. Water can take life, but it can also give life. Water has a significant piece in our culture because we're high desert people, and here in Zion National Park, just like any other places here in our traditional land, there just isn't a lot of water except for this river that runs through it. For us, the goodness of water is that it gives life. Everything is connected, everything has life. It just lives differently than we do. Our belief is everything that was created here, plants and animals, the rocks, had a life like us at one time, and that they could understand the Paiute language. That's why the language is so important for us to retain.
It's a bar, it's a bar. It's to bar up on it. Sumai pikatem uruvate upaur paupia nisanin with icha alpa piayarom. Urupaka by swakar icha to vipar swakar.
People have this inherent responsibility to care for the land. We're tied to the land. Our culture is tied to the land. So if the land goes away and the land is mismanaged or misused, then our culture goes away.
Both of my parents taught me from when I was little that my ancestors connect me to this place. When I come here, I think of all of the stories my parents told me, and I want to make sure that my kids know where they come from. Zion helps me know who I am from my history and my people.
As parents, I think it's very important for us to convey our traditions to our children, and they always see that as a significant part of their life, that they're able to pass it on to their children, and we live on forever.
Zion is very special. It's not just the beauty of the walls or the sound of the river, it's something magical, something different, something unlike I feel in other places.
With all the people coming in, I think every one of them can find their own story in Zion.
This place is so precious, and it's our job to try to make sure that it's protected forever.
When you think about what you can do to be a steward of the national park, people often think really large scale, but it can be very, very simple things. Every little action, if replicated over many people, will have a really large impact worldwide.
日本とザイオンの自然の違いを感じるのと一緒に、ザイオンの自然の中からすごく厳しい自然の中でも成り立っているというところから感じて。
Whether you come to the park every day or whether you visit it once, let it take hold of you. Let it have some say on how you operate in the world.
I think that only when we personally connect with a place do we truly gain the power to protect it. That's the whole point, is to protect this place, not just for us here today, but for future generations forever.